How did your parents punish you as a child? Be disappointed, which hurt a lot actually. They made me write essays about why what I had done was wrong. They went to some parenting class at church and the guy told them to find the thing the kid hates most and make them do that. Well, I hated writing with a passion, so they made me write a 5-page essay about what I had done wrong anytime I was being a little piece of crap. I shaped up pretty quickly. Kneeling in dry rice while holding my arms out to my sides parallel to the floor. Typically, it would last 20-30 minutes. If I complained or made any sounds, she would add time to my punishment. Come to think of it, I think I was an abused child. That sounds like some Guantanamo Bay torture crap. I was mostly a good child. The worst that ever happened was no Dragon Ball Z for 6 months. This was during the Cell Saga on Toonami. It was the most agonizing time of my life. My brothers were still able to watch it, so I had to go upstairs and read until it was over. Let me fill in the gaps for you. Ha ha ha. Take things away like the N64 or whatever. Also, when I was little, instead of just counting to 3 if I was being bad or whatever, they'd keep counting until I stopped. The number they stopped at would be how long I'd be in timeout. They'd keep counting until I stopped. The number they stopped at would be how long I'd be in timeout, adding to my arsenal. Thanks. When I was a kid, I played my Game Boy, Pokemon, way too much for my parents' liking, and so in order to punish me, my mom took me outside and put the Game Boy on the ground in front of me and placed a hammer next to it. I started begging her and crying to please forgive me and that I wouldn't play as much anymore. And this moment she sent chills down my spine. She looked at me with super serious eyes and said, "I'm not going to break your Game Boy. What made you think that?" And there I sighed with relief until she said, "You're going to be the one breaking it." And so I was then forced as punishments to smash my own Game Boy with a hammer as my mother watched. After I had finished, she walked away back inside and continued on with her day while I just sat on the ground looking at my now destroyed Game Boy, sobbing and holding broken pieces, trying to put it back together to no avail. The pain is so real, it haunts me still. My dad was the best at punishment. He knew I didn't mind being grounded, so my punishments were always annoying chores around the house. Things like picking up sticks in the backyard, picking grass from between the bricks in the walkway, power washing, staining the fences, moving dirt around. Just boring, tedious, manual labor, often waking me up at like 5 AM to start it. Crap, this sounds like what my brother and I had to do to be seen as productive members of the family. Though power washing dongs on the side of the barn was always funny. I'd get my butt whooped. Sometimes my mom would let me choose who gave me the whooping, and I'd always choose to stay in my room and wait for my dad to get home from work because she would take out all of the frustrations in her life on me with a belt. They would ground me. No TV or video games unless there was a new episode of Seinfeld coming on. Then I could watch that because it'd be too cruel if I couldn't watch Seinfeld. Few years later, when my parents divorced and I lived with my mom and stepdad, I would be punished with actual punches, kicks, and getting thrown around. Sometimes heavy objects, but more like being punished for existing because God told them to, and less like being punished for anything I did. Pretty much the same, and anything I liked got destroyed in front of me. Skateboards ran over while I was made to watch, etc. My mother made me stand in the corner for periods of time. Sometimes 10 minutes, sometimes 30. Being a hyper kid, this was freaking torture. I preferred butt whoopings. Geez, reading some of these responses really reinforces my belief that I got really lucky with my parents. They're both extremely great people. Heck, if they weren't my parents, I still think I'd be great friends with them. Normally if I did something bad, we'd have a discussion about it. They'd let me know they were disappointed and try to figure out why I decided to do whatever I did. There were a few times as a kid I would get yelled at from my dad, usually when I would continue doing something I was told multiple times to not do, or when I did something bad that we had previously discussed I should not do. It was less him yelling, and more him just raising his voice and talking sternly. My sister and I referred to it as his army voice because he sounded kinda like a stern drill instructor from the army. My parents didn't hit me or my sister, and they were always patient and caring with us. I also always felt like they respected me. which was rare as a kid to feel from an adult. It always increased my respect for someone else if I felt like they respected me. My parents always respected my boundaries growing up, and if I wanted something like privacy, they weren't the prying types and they'd give me my time and space. The main one was groundings or having the power cable for the PC taken away. That was the worst because it was just sat there begging to be used, taunting me even, but its core power component was missing. I knew where it was, on top of my dad's wardrobe shoved right at the back, but I wasn't tall enough to reach. My mum would always threaten to call my dad. They were divorced, and that terrified me enough to stop me doing bad things. As a little kid I used to wear overalls all the time. If I was being a little snot they would hang me from a doorknob until I cooled down. Sucked. I'm the aunt of a very rambunctious, prone to dramatizing throwing fit 6-year-old and I just pictured hanging him from his overalls and how much more enraged he would become. Terrifying. Lectures. A world of lectures. Nothing but lectures. I was never spanked or grounded, and never lost any privileges or had any toys taken away. I'm the youngest of 5, so by the time I was born, my father had forgotten how to parent small children. Instead, he would talk to me in the same tones that he used with my 16-year-old sister, which mostly consisted of A. a lot of appeals to my better judgment, and B. horrified disbelief that I was acting so childish, despite the fact that I was, a child. The general consensus among the family is that it worked wonders. Out of the 5 of us, I was the best behaved. Because he spoke to me as if I knew better, I genuinely believed that I did. This is awesome. Mostly just guilt trips, making me feel bad for disappointing them. Nobody can punish me worse than I punish me. They banned me from playing my beloved Atari 260. It sucked. Got grounded for 3 months. For not walking the dogs to the moon. Legit. I wish I was kidding. Got my butt beat for anything and everything and anything I got attached to was used to control me. Spanking mostly. If I'd known that I'd have to pay for it in my adulthood, I would have tried to enjoy it more. They regularly beat my butt with a wooden cutting board. They went through several. That is to say, several of them were broken beyond repair by impacts with my butt. It did no good and taught me nothing but to hate my parents. If it was exceptionally bad, our biggest fear was disappointing dad. Because in dad's eyes we could do no wrong, and, even as a kid, watching that realization hit him and seeing the disappointment was terrifying and heartbreaking. But my mom's go-to punishment was clever. If we got in trouble we ended up having to stay right by mom's side and do everything she was doing for an entire day or an entire weekend. And she would save certain chores specifically for these days. Scrubbing the kitchen floor by hand, weeding the garden, mowing the lawn. We lived on a full acre, etc. Nothing was worse for us than a day entirely full of chores from morning to night. And you couldn't just complain to her, because she was right there alongside you doing the same thing. If she wasn't taking a break, you weren't taking a break. She probably didn't have the best day of it either, because kids never do the best job with chores and they take a really long time. So I'm sure she often had to go through and redo a lot of the stuff we had just helped with. We lived on a full acre, on a full acre, an acre, 1 acre. That's cute. My mum's worst trick was to not speak to me. She'd just be so disappointed in me, which hurt to high heaven. Then she died and my dad was in charge and he just yelled and beat me up, so I didn't give a frick. I got my butt kicked, hit with a belt, switch, phone cord, open hand, closed fist. I would then be told to stand in place while I was belittled and demeaned, essentially tearing me down emotionally and mentally. Sometimes this process took 3 hours and was usually done on a school night. I used to say that I deserved some of it, but looking back I doubt I ever deserved permanent nerve damage in my left shoulder as a result. I am so sorry. I hope you're in a much better place now emotionally and mentally, and that you're in a loving and supporting environment. No PlayStation. Fine, I'll read. No books. Fine, I'll go on the computer. No computer. I freaking love Lego. Well, let's see. When I first got caught looking at pee back in 2006, my parents took me aside and lovingly told me that, while pee can sometimes be fun, Looking at it too much is unhealthy and would give me an unhealthy view of women and relationships, and sent me to my room without internet for a week where I learned my lesson. That's a lie. Mother, my parents found dirty websites on the computer and treated me like I was killing cats. Dad got out the belt on my 12-year-old butt and went to town. Then mom came in, FBI interrogation style, and guilt tripped me into misery, talking about how she's going to lose her job. I looked at P on the home computer, not her work computer. Don't know how she thought that would work, and wouldn't let me look at a computer until June of 2007. Now they get pissy and mad and wonder why the wife beating scene in The Godfather makes me uncomfortable. And here I am, worried that I haven't caught my 14-year-old trying to look at any of that stuff. Of course I haven't touched either of his computers in a long time and have never looked, so I suppose there's that. Can you guys identify in what countries you experience the disciplining? USA. Grounding me from books. Not being able to read was the worst torture for me. Got caught skipping school. Mum grounded me for over a year. By the time I was allowed out, the 2 families that had kids that I was friends with moved out from the area, so I had no friends to hang outside with no more. In Korea, my parents hit me in the calves and made me sit in a corner with my arms over my head. Sounds silly, but it was the worst as a kid. Explained what I'd done wrong and what I should have done. Hugged me, sent me to my room for quarter of an hour, then hugged me again. I remember being grounded once for being unkind to another girl when I was about 9 or 10. I never understood the limits and punishments other parents put on their kids. My older siblings used to get hit by a belt to teach them a lesson. I never got the same punishment, fortunately. My dad hit me once, but felt bad afterwards, and my mum tried to punish me, but I was cute as heck and I always made her laugh instead. Only child and cute equals no punishments. Called my nana a bastard once and she washed my mouth out with soap, shields, green and white. I can taste it in my mind. Didn't call her a bastard again. Spanked, grounded, privileges taken away, whatever worked. Wish more parents would do it today. Where is the jumper cables guy when you really need him? Waiting. He will arrive when you least expect him. So, not in this thread. They took video games away from me. Pretty horrible considering I was completely addicted in all senses of the word. When I told them it was my only stress relief and only time I was happy, they just took them away more. It was the only thing I had to do pretty much as well. I was a suicidally depressed kid with horrible anxiety as well. So basically I attempted thrice within a month and got horrible mood swings. I nearly failed that year. My plastic dinosaurs were put on top of the refrigerator, where I could see them but couldn't get to them. Reddit always loves this one. When I was little, if I was really misbehaving, my parents would threaten me with, or actually force me to watch the clown scene in Poltergeist. That was definitely too spooky for me. It was a punishment that worked, let me tell you. Groundings from TV phone. Didn't take work out in the country though, with a bookworm child. After that, lots of spanking, belting. Incessant deprivation. It's why I hate my mom to this day. Being African, I got all forms of punishment. Have you ever plowed a field with bulls? So many dong jokes. Would not let me go outside and play with friends. This was 20+ years ago. Today, I'd probably be punished by having to go outside and play with friends. Go outside and play with your friends. But there's nobody out there. Exactly. She used to ban me from watching TV. I'd get round this by listening to TV instead. Yelling. Lots and lots of yelling. Maybe a few slaps, but not really. My mom is freaking scary when she yells. At least I know where I get it from. My folks used to take our bedroom doors off the hinges. Sneaky good punishment. That door is the only privacy a kid has. My mother did this to me when I became a teenager. It was the only thing that worked on me besides spankings, and I was too old for that. I didn't mind groundings cause I would just go in my room and chill. I have always enjoyed being alone. When she grounded me, then took my door away, I couldn't be alone and it was awful. Beat me with a frozen hose. It's not as bad as it sounds. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video.